Nick Diaz and Tony Ferguson are both back, and actually, I don't completely hate it. We're going to talk about this in just a second. Before we do, though, I do want to say, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Let me bring you over to MMAorbit.com, where the official announcement was made by them. The UFC's first fight night event in Abu Dhabi on August 3rd is stacked, and I'll read you out the full card right now. Co-main event: Nick Diaz versus Vicente Luque, which is 5 rounds. I'm just most excited for that, to be honest with you. Sorry about reading that one first, but the main event, obviously, but we already knew, is Corey Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov, which is a #1 contender fight. We have Chito Vera versus Davison Figueiredo, Mackenzie Dern versus Lupita Godinez, and Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa. I think that this is finally not abuse. Because you know that the UFC has been giving Tony Ferguson some killers, not so much in his last couple fights, but Nick Diaz, I would assume they do the same thing too, because Dana White has had so many negative experiences with Nick Diaz, right? But I actually don't mind this. First of all, I still don't believe that Nick Diaz and Tony Ferguson should be allowed to fight. I don't think so. Nick Diaz was not himself in his last fight. He quit. He couldn't take the damage. He was probably just there for money, and Tony Ferguson is not right in the head. He should not be fighting. But these opponents that they're facing, and it sucks, man, because I love Vicente Luque, but Vicente Luque has clearly lost a step. He's not nearly as dangerous as he once was, and it's not like Nick Diaz taking on Robbie Lawler. So Robbie Lawler, I mean, no, Robbie Lawler lost a little bit of a step too, but it seems like Robbie Lawler was honestly taking it easy on him. That's what a lot of people were really believing. But man, I don't even, this is so exciting. Both Nick Diaz, Tony Ferguson, man. Like, I have such conflicted feelings because I don't want Tony to take any more damage. I don't want Nick Diaz to take any more damage, but like, Nick Diaz returning is such a cool thing. I was a fan of Nick Diaz since I began watching this sport, and it was around 2012 when I started watching this sport. So I've been a big fan of Nick Diaz. I will say he is a better fighter than Nate. He had more potential than Nate, and his career was completely robbed from him, which really saddens me. And it sucks that he has to fight, and he's like, what, 42 now? Something like that. Regardless, these fights, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chiesa. I think this is finally a fight where Tony Ferguson not can win. Tony Ferguson's done. Michael Chiesa is going to kill him, but it's a good fight for two legends of the sport. Michael Chiesa, Tony Ferguson, two guys that won't inflict an insane amount of damage on each other. Michael Chiesa has also lost a step, but Tony Ferguson isn't going to take an unreasonable amount of damage in this fight, which is honestly what we need to see. And Tony Ferguson needs to be cut after this. He's going to lose. He has no chance of winning, but I already think it's abuse putting somebody like Tony Ferguson in there because Tony Ferguson clearly isn't right in the head anymore. Tony Ferguson's taking too much damage. I don't think it's okay, and I don't want to watch it, okay? Michael Chiesa is a good opponent for him. Michael Chiesa is a grappler. Michael Chiesa at least won't inflict that horrible damage that will make me go, ugh, you know? I like that. So it's nice that Tony Ferguson's facing Michael Chiesa. Mackenzie Dern versus Lupita Godinez and Chito Vera versus Davison Figueiredo. Same with Corey Sandhagen and Umar Nurmagomedov are all a little bit of old news. I wanted to touch on these two fights in particular, and Nick Diaz versus Vicente Luque being 5 rounds is interesting because it's a huge fight for Nick Diaz, but can he even do 5 rounds? He quit against Robbie Lawler. He keeps showing up like on Instagram and stuff like he's in some pretty good shape, but when we saw him in the octagon, that's not the Nick Diaz I knew. And yeah, I know you could make the argument of like, hey, he hasn't fought in so many years. Nick Diaz just needed a tune-up fight, but in reality, Nick Diaz is old. Nick Diaz is partying. Nick Diaz doesn't care anymore. And Vicente Luque, it's nice that Vicente Luque probably, like Michael Chiesa, won't be able to do the same amount of damage that any other fighter would do to Nick Diaz. So it's nice to see, but I hate it at the same time. I'm excited to see Nick Diaz back. I'll get hyped for it, but I will be legitimately worried for Nick Diaz, you know? I don't want to see him take any more damage. Tony Ferguson, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't really like. I never really understood the hype for Tony Ferguson. I really got turned off from him the time where he said that he just broke his training partner's ankle or whatever it was. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I always thought he was a little weird. I always thought he was a little disrespectful. So I was never too big on Tony Ferguson, but at the end of the day, I don't want to see him take this damage. I think it's abuse. I think it's abuse of somebody that's not right in the head. And yeah, you could, well, Tony Ferguson can do what he wants. No. At some point, we got to put a stop to it. Tony Ferguson will probably fight until he's 60. Honestly, do you think that? You go, nah, I can still win one. And just forever until he dies. And then one shot's going to put him in a wheelchair for life. You know what I mean? I see that coming. I don't like it. Nick Diaz, yeah, he can do what he wants. And I don't feel the same way about Nick Diaz as I do Tony Ferguson. I straight up don't think Tony Ferguson's okay in the head. But Nick Diaz, he at the end of the day, he can do what he wants. I don't want to see him take any more damage. It looks like he doesn't care. I hope he doesn't need the money. It's really weird for me because I feel sad for both guys, and I'm excited at the same time because Tony Ferguson's exciting whenever he shows up. The fans love Tony Ferguson. It's a great thing. Tony Ferguson gets the cheers, right? So I'm happy and I'm sad at the same time. I would love to know if you guys kind of share that opinion with me. I would love to know what you guys think about this in the comments. And I know I'm going to get some people for the Tony Ferguson comments, so I'm ready for it. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We had another video that came out recently taking a look at Ronda Rousey just being delusional. Take a look at it right here, guys. I'll see you over there. Take care.